right. Hi, everyone. You know, that video that's quite flattering spin. You know, I did ask the people who put it together and the interviewer to ask those same people about all my flaws and shortcomings. They came back, they said, there's so much content. You know, this is a whole other video. I want to recognize, obviously, my fellow honorees, Carla, Kevin, Bob, Wendy, and Pep, even Pep. It really is an honor to share this evening with you and be in the company, of course, of so many other impressive honorees in the past and those that are here tonight. You notice I'm the only one up here without my wife. My wife right here below, Maria. She's not at 100% strength. It's been a trying week. But Maria was my high school sweetheart. First, I met her when I was 15, my first date when I got my license. She eventually broke up with me. 7 years of separation until I got smart and I chased her down and found her. That is the comeback story of my lifetime. I thought deeply about what I was going to share with you tonight, and I've been wrestling with two sort of elusive issues, quests. They're wrapped up in a single defiant theme, and that theme is bring it on. It was a favorite saying of a business executive, senior executive that I worked for early in my career. It was invoked during the most trying times. Failed merger, crushing regulators coming after you, 2008 financial crisis that threatened the business. Bring it on conveyed this sort of fearless that no challenge was too big to overcome. And what stood in the way became the way. As I transitioned, as the video showed, from the business world into the philanthropic world, I brought to the Dan Murphy Foundation that same sort of bring it on mindset. It remains part of what we do. I cling to it because it conveys two basic tenets of our Catholic faith. First is courage, otherwise known as be not afraid. I'm going to get back to that. The second one is purpose. My daughter mentioned it in the video, Jackie. I believe firmly that there is a purpose to our lives. There is a challenge to be reckoned with, and a reason that we're all here at this moment in time. On fear, this past Lent, I ventured over to Our Savior Parish at USC for Mass on Sunday evening with Father Matt Wheeler. Father Matt Wheeler, he's got it going on. You met him tonight. Kevin's video, and I think others. I know you're out there, Father Matt. I saw you. But on that Sunday night, they put us, I was there with some of my fellow board members. We're in the front pew. And Father Matt was, the gospel was on the Transfiguration, Mount Tabor. And Father Matt focused in on the fear of the three apostles, seeing the divinity of Christ. And he told them, what are you afraid? And so Father Matt talked about this concept of fear and overcoming your fear. And so I'm in the front row, and I furtively grab my phone, and I go down, and I have no other pew to hide me. I didn't want him to think I was texting while he was doing his homily. And I asked my AI agent, how many times does that concept come up in the Bible, or is that conveyed? Be not afraid. 365 times. And when you think about it, from the very beginning, Genesis, Abraham, he's sitting in his tent with, eating grapes and wine, and he's all worried about being childless and his legacy, and God comes to him and says, Get out of your comfort zone. Get out there. I want you to be the father of Israel. There's nothing to be afraid about. Moses and all his trials in getting the Jews out of bondage in the 40 years in the desert. And then think about Jesus and the gospel and all the messages. You can think of Peter, well, he's the storm in the seas in Galilee. And Christ comes walking across the water and they think they're going to drown. And Peter jumps out of the boat and he goes towards Christ. But when the biggest fear comes to him, he starts sinking. But when he puts his faith in Christ, he's pulled up. So the message is, put your fears aside, surrender to God's plan. No easy task. And on that second concept of purpose, I believe we're all called for the adventure of a lifetime, a quest. But this begs the question, what is my quest? Why am I alive at this moment in time? What's the mission? Now, your philosophy majors in the audience will know that they say that sometimes finding the correct answer is not as important as asking the right questions. To illustrate this vital role of courage, overcoming your fear, and discovering your purpose in life, I draw your attention to Joan of Arc. Outside of our Blessed Mother, the Virgin Mary, there is no greater woman or saint that ever lived. And if any of you want to debate me, in the after party, we can go at it. You may be surprised to learn that Mark Twain was taken with Joan of Arc's story and wrote a book, The Personal Recollection of Joan of Arc. He researched it for 12 years. He looked at the English side and the French and everything they said about her. And he published his work in 1896. It's an historical novel. Twain considered it his best work. Here's the setting. Early 1400s France. France and Britain are deep into the 100-year war. It's not going well for France. It's in shambles. The government has collapsed. The king is hiding in exile. Dead and decaying bodies are all over the rat-infested streets of Paris. France's armies are fractured in retreat. They're ceding more territory with every lost battle. The King of England is demanding dominion over France, signaling the end of the French culture and their way of life and their devotion to the Catholic Church. Rumors abound that the King of France intends to surrender and capitulate to England's demands. Enter Joan of Arc. Joan of Arc's a 19-year-old illiterate peasant girl in hierarchical France, where status matters. She had no status. She has zero training or experience in military matters or warfare. She's armed only with these purported mystical visions from God that she is destined to save France, which no one believes. Mark Twain guides you through her efforts, they're often futile, to persuade the local mayor, the magistrate, the low military man, anyone who will listen, that she has a plan to save France, and she must be granted an audience with the king. She runs into brick walls. No one takes her seriously, but she never loses confidence. Eventually, her powers of persuasion, combined with France's desperation, allow her to prevail, and after a dangerous horseback mission through the countryside and through English-occupied territory, she finally gets an audience with the king, which is a whole nother story, which I don't have time to go into. It's fascinating. Read the book, okay? The king, out of options, gives her a chance. Her counterattack war planning begins with the French generals under her command. One encounter with her generals before the initial battle is dramatic and a bit cringy. She chastises the generals for not attending daily mass as instructed. These are hardened men, they're killers, okay? They complain to her that they see no value in going to Mass. She responds by demanding they attend Mass twice a day and that they enjoy it because this is God's will. And if we are to be victorious, we must do it. And they comply. In the initial battle, as the English forces, with their archers and overpowering cannons, are pounding the French positions, the typical discussions among the generals ensue. How do we surrender and negotiate a truce? For once again, we are outgunned. Nonsense, says Joan. She grabs the French flag and a horse and fearlessly charges directly into the astonished English lines. This inspires her troops behind her, and the French fall in line. They follow her through and they rout the enemy. And this happens over and over again. These victories enable France to endure and ultimately prevail and save the king, the Republic, and ultimately they claim victory at the end of the 100-Year War. During her successful campaign, Joan was famously asked, "Are you not afraid?" And she replies, "No, I am not afraid. God is with me. I was born for this. So were you. So am I. But what was I born for? What is the mission?" These are weighty questions. They demand heavy answers. And if you have the courage to search for them and to prayerfully open your heart to be the instrument of God's will, you'll discover them. Karen, Kevin, Pat, Bob, Wendy, they've all given you some ideas tonight. But in the short time I have left with you, I can share a few thoughts about my own mission, my mission search, because it's never over, and hopefully offer some inspiration for you to think more deeply about your search to fulfill God's plan for you. Dan Murphy Foundation, I mentioned in the video, it was no accident that I was asked to join the Dan Murphy Foundation board, retire from the corporate world. Like my fellow board members, many of them here tonight, thank you for being here. I was drawn to the mission to support a thriving Catholic community in the Archdiocese of LA. And it's completely aligned with the Archbishop's pastoral priorities. But we're not here as a passive funder. We are an activist investor helping to shape the upward trajectory of the organizations and the ministries of the Archdiocese that we support. Our core strategic priorities have a bring it on element to them. Not because what we're trying to do is easy, but it's because it's hard work. Because these are challenging endeavors at this moment in the Archdiocese history. First of all, our top priority is the Catholic schools. Paula Scala, who's here tonight, is my guest. Superintendent of our Catholic schools, has a very clear vision to become the highest performing system of Catholic schools in the nation for every student we serve. Now, how do you accomplish that given the demographic cliff? People are just not having kids anymore, and they're not sending them as much to the Catholic schools. And there's stark test data that tells us that too many of our students are falling behind. And our schools operate on a shoestring budget. You start that by putting a stake in the ground about excellence in academics. And Paul and his team have a great plan to actually deal with the unfinished learning, what we call learning loss, but it's unfinished learning of our schools, so that we can get our students actually reading at grade level and grasping the necessary math skills so they could advance. And along with the Hilton Foundation, we really support the dual college enrollment, which offers our students college credit courses through ASU, Arizona State University, and Seton Hill University. So they graduate with college credit, more prepared for the rigors of higher learning, all at the price of a high school tuition. Operational excellence is another thing. This is the biggest part where we put our funding, is annual grants towards repairs and maintenance and capital improvement projects. There's a lot of high school presidents here tonight, and they understand. We partner with the Shea Foundation and others, creating safe environments, state-of-the-art learning environments. We want to keep our schools competitive with the taxpayer-funded schools. And finally, the Catholic identity of the schools is so important. The formation of our kids is incredible. And Eric Rubalcaba, who runs, he's the chief of mission and Catholic identity of the schools, is a saint. The upgrades to the accreditation of the religious ed teachers and the curriculum, and then the assessment of the knowledge and the belief of our children, and then crafting the curriculum around that. That wasn't done 2-3 years ago, and now we're doing it. Excellence in our schools. That is the mission. All right, next is vocations. We are blessed with 850 or so priests in this diocese. That's the good news. Unfortunately, if nothing changes in the trends, we will have something less than 50% of that in the next 20 or 30 years. Those are sobering projections. I should note that the numbers are improving at the Queen of Angels House of Priestly Formation. St. John's Seminary are filling up with young men under Father Peter Saucedo's leadership. Our foundation is pouring resources into organizations, both lay and religious, that advance the promotion of religious life for both the women religious and men in the priesthood. And we will not stop. That's the mission. Evangelization of young and families. You know, the age of Christendom is over. We're in this apostolic mission phase. The bring it on test for us is to recover for our age the apostolic mindset of the early Christians. So the foundation has turned its attention toward diocesan ministries and other organizations that invite people to a closer relationship with Christ, such as Focus Missionaries that were so fantastic on our college campuses, Net Ministries, where we've put money behind a hub here in the Archdiocese for our high schools. And boy, the St. Edward's Retreat Center up in Wrightwood, Kenny Lund and the Lund family, they run a fabulous retreat center in the mountains of Wrightwood for high schools, parishes, pre-seminarians, where the presence of the Holy Spirit is palpable. And then Pat Powers is here tonight. Pat Powers and Deborah. The Shroud of Turin exhibit at Christ Cathedral. It is a powerful new destination and exhibit. Pat led a team down there that they put together an exhibit that cinematically and powerfully tells the story of Christ's burial shroud. And through the intersection of science, on the authenticity of the shroud, and faith, it is a mesmerizing place and a real punch in the face for anyone with lingering doubts about the resurrection of Jesus. You've got to go see it. There are green shoots in these evangelization efforts. Conversion to Catholicism is growing across the nation. Young men in particular are returning in numbers to Mass. And this past Easter, this archdiocese welcomed over 8,000 new converts, where the average in the past year was 3,000. That is also the mission. And they mentioned the Order of Malta. I just want to comment briefly. You know, my Maria and I were drawn to the order through its charism of hands-on service to the sick and the poor. The order is more renowned for the pilgrimages to Lourdes, but it's more grounded in local service works here in the Archdiocese. The founder was a monk, Blessed Gerard, who formed a hospital in Jerusalem over 900 years ago to care for pilgrims. He wrote these words, and I want to share them with you. Our fraternity will last forever because the soil in which it is rooted is the misery of the world. And if it should please God, there will always be those who will labor to reduce suffering and make the misery of the world more endurable. Alleviate suffering and misery. That's the mission, too. And finally, my friends are here from Holy Sepulchre. Yay, Holy Sepulchre! Maria and I were invested in 2002, the year the cathedral opened. For over 2,000 years, we, the church, have been fighting, scratching, clawing to maintain a Christian presence in the Holy Land, the birthplace of our faith and the location of many Catholic shrines. This fight continues fiercely today, supporting Christianity in the Holy Land. That's the mission. Okay, so now, my wish is that everyone here takes stock of your God-given talents, traits, and seeks out, like some of my fellow honorees who have already demonstrated this, and discover your mission in life and channel your inner Joan of Arc so you can say, no, I'm not afraid. God is with me. I was born for this. And a final thought from an anonymous but very wise soul. In the high-stakes drama all around us, we each have been given a part to play, one that bears our name and no one else's. We each have the mercy of God to receive, a self to put to death, a kingdom to gain, a battle to fight, spiritual enemies to slay, comrades to aid, rebels to win over. The ancient battle rages all around us, and the adventure we were born to beckons. Bring it on.